So share with us, we'd love to hear your take. Have you seen aliens, UFOs in conjunction with DMT?
When I do DMT, I've not seen entities, whether it's the blue lady, the purple octopus man, the machine elves. I feel the pulsing, throbbing intelligence of the universe because we don't know where they come from. I don't know where they come from. I don't know life without UFOs, but I'm convinced there is a phenomena that I call meta-terrestrial, meaning it's beyond our current understanding. Could be some super secret military, maybe. Could be our collective unconscious, could be extraterrestrial, could be interdimensional, could be a mix of all of the above. I don't know, and I don't need to know to accept the reality of the phenomenon. So Steven Spielberg read one of my father's books, said, I want to do a movie about that, hired my father as advisor, bought the rights to the title for the movie.
Oh, look, Paul, it's great to have you on the show. Good to reconnect again, have a great old chat. And I'm so interested to see where this goes today, actually, because I can just feel I'm excited and I love your sense of humor. You got a cheeky sense of humor like me. So who knows what comes out of our mouth. I was listening to something the other day, which I found very interesting. And it was Bashar channeling and talking about how often DMT or breath work or ayahuasca or a sound bath or a bufo, etc. These different modalities that people use. But often they are permission slips for them to be able to tap into and access things which we may have forgotten we had access to in our past, our ancient past, let's call it, or permission slips to help us to be able to log onto a frequency that we might be able to get to in the future. It's like they're a way of connecting. What's your reflection on that? How would you comment on that one?
I like that. One of the ways I look at DMT, which is one of the most powerful psychedelic substances in the world, is that to me, it feels qualitatively different than other substances that I may or may not have done in my misspent youth. Permission slip is an interesting way to look at it. I think of it, DMT as, which is one, it's not as well known as like psilocybin or LSD. A lot of people have heard of ayahuasca, which is a form of it, but DMT, when we say that, it's usually a shorter lived, intense experience with no bodily reactions. They call it the businessman's high often. And I find that DMT is not, in my experience, a hallucinogenic drug, but more of a plant medicine technology that, either permission slips you or opens a window. It seems to allow you access or bring that other world into your brain in a way that you can see this from time to time if you do it several times, this permanence of state, that it's always there. And you may go deeper into it one time than another or see it from a different point of view. But to me, it feels like it is something always there. It's like the base level operating system intelligence of the universe that knows you, knows what you need, and remembers your last appointment with it.
Yeah, I love it. So for those watching, we met Paul in LA when we were there in July or May this year. So that's how we kind of come to connect with you, Paul. And we had a fun time trying DMT with you for the first time. So let's share with the audience about the DMT, like in a bit more detail, how we take it, how long it is, and then maybe we can share the experiences of some of the most profound things we've seen on DMT.
Sure. So like I said, they often call it the businessman's high because it can last as short as 5 minutes. And as hard as it is to believe, in that 5 minutes, you can have one of the most intense experiences of your life and be back and checking your phone for traffic just a few minutes later. One of the things that I like to calibrate with people that are trying it for the first time is how fast acting it is, because it's hard to believe how fast this substance can take you away. And it leads me to believe that the people who say that it is secreted in some way by the pineal gland may be right, because it kind of feels like it's activating something that's already there, doesn't it? It's just so fast. And so it's such an amazing substance that you can be here, completely present, mindful, and then you're in a completely foreign world, 7-dimensional shapes, perhaps, complex geometric patterns built of love and understanding is one way I've heard it described. Meeting with your soul or any manner of entities or machine elves, as Terence McKenna says, within seconds, and then you're whisked back and trying to just come to terms with the amount that you're able to remember, which may be a sliver. I liken it to sometimes, let's say you're in a planetarium that has 1,000 TV monitors. How much of that can you actually input? And then how much of that do you remember? So that sliver of that sliver is what you bring home, and that can still be a transcendental experience.
Yeah. I remember when I tried it, we smoked it through what you call a vape pen, and we all took turns passing it around, and it comes on quite quickly. It's like activating the pineal gland, and it's an inward journey, so you close down your eyes, and it took me before I came into the world as an embryo, before the embryo stage, and for me, I remember I had a bit of a purge and a cry, but it felt like I was not gone for very long at all, or it was such a quick amount of time, and we got absorbed so much information all in that one moment. But it was only like 10 minutes or less
Yeah,
when I came back to. So it's really profound.
Yeah, and your experience is emblematic of a lot of psychedelic experiences where it's not necessarily pleasant and joyful moment to moment. Because I look at these, when done responsibly, as work either on yourself, because they can be deeply therapeutic, or work to understand what seems to be another world. And I, like you, I have broken down and sobbed deep soul tears, and it can be cathartic, and it's this joy, it's this voyage of discovery that, again, may not be always wine and roses every second, but so deeply personal, like what you just mentioned, Roz, and insightful, impactful, and what I feel just healing. And I no longer try to set too much intention, because I feel this plant medicine technology knows me better than I do, loves me more than I do, and knows what I need. And I find that just an amazing feeling of kind of cosmic love.
Oh, isn't that a beautiful observation? I love that you're at the point where you don't need to set an intention, because so often people going into any sort of ceremony, one of the things, so what's your intention? What's your intention? And, sometimes there's pressure to come up with a profound intention. What's something that'll sound impressive,
Especially if you're being filmed trying different psychedelics.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
What's something that'll sound really impressive? And in a sense, the ultimate is, I trust the medicine, I trust source and the divine to give me what I need at this moment, right? Because that's real trust. And certainly in Roxy's experience, and in my experience as well, the connection, the energy, the message that comes through with this is often very reassuring, guiding. Like even when Roxy talks about she was feeling, that feeling of, let's say, her soul not really wanting to go into the embryo and to go into 3D and being born. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. It's like if they know what stuff they'd signed before they were coming in, they'd go, take me back, where's a UFO to beam me up? I'm ready to get out of here.
Yeah.
It's tough. So to say it's all right sometimes when you felt like you didn't want to be here, or it's all right sometimes if you felt like you were the black sheep of the family, or you didn't belong, or something wasn't quite right about you. It's because you're not normal, right? And it like reassures you, you are like more sensitive. You are like more aware than perhaps you give yourself credit for. And the message that I found in the energy was very kind, loving, guiding, and it was beautiful for you.
For you though, you went to a hallway, and at the end of the hallway was the Ganesh, wasn't it?
Oh, there was this purple octopus guy
Whoa.
talking to me about and showing me all the life lessons that I'd learned in my life. Here's the time where you were too hard on yourself and you learned to sort of not be so critical. Here's the time where, you had regret. Here's the time where you felt shame. Look at these lessons that you've learned. You're doing a really good job. Keep going. Be really nice and loving.
I mean, can't we all use a purple octopus guy who in loving tones reviews episodes of our life and gives us encouragement?
Absolutely. So share with us, we'd love to hear your take. Have you seen aliens, UFOs in conjunction with DMT?
Well, I have two answers for that. So I hosted a ceremony here a couple of weeks ago with two good friends, and it was a wonderful time. We had the mattress pads over here, as you know, and then we're up to about 2:30 in the morning, and we're out in my driveway, and I said, "Hey kids, I got to go to bed. I'm tired." The rule is people have to text me when they get home. So I woke up the next morning and I got text from them saying they stayed until 5:30 in my driveway looking at the sky and saw UFOs in the sky. And I said, well, that's wonderful. And they both had very similar accounts. And that's wonderful. But then I reminded them that it is quite simply against the law to see a UFO over a Hynek home without a Hynek being present. And it's simply not done. But that was interesting. And they both felt, and who knows, that it was somehow connected to the ceremony. The first time I did DMT, I was full of intention, Pete, and it was research to see if there is a spiritual land bridge between the DMT world and that of aliens. My operating thesis is that things that we human have siloed away in different buckets, like DMT or aliens or ghosts or what have you, may not always be entirely different phenomena. There may be a common substrate from which they all emanate. So I blasted off in the DMT rocket ship. As soon as I got my bearings, I busted out the question, hello, are you what we perceive to be UFOs and aliens? And I felt millions of miles of synapses firing in what seemed mostly like a feminine type Gaia world. I say mostly though, because any type of binary spectrum, good or bad, masculine or feminine, just doesn't capture the complexity, but it felt more nurturing and loving. And I asked that question and the synapses were firing. And the answer I got back was, we can't explain in a way that you would understand. And I thought, well, that's not no. And yes, if DMT is related to aliens, and there's a reason I think it might be, I can understand how that bridge is just a little bit beyond my comprehension level. So I was really encouraged, and that sort of gave me the energy to really pursue this, not only for personal healing, of which I can certainly use, but this voyage of exploration to see if I can't help establish, to the satisfaction of scientists, of disinterested scientists, that this realm is objectively real and in some way connected with what we call aliens.
I reflect on a comment our friend Robert Grant said, in that he suggested that perhaps these various substances aren't necessarily taking us to a world that is different than the world that we are in, but rather giving us the ability to be actually able to really perceive the world that we are in from a different perspective. So we all hear and we're around information that says, oh, the world's made up of frequency and vibration, vibrating at different rates. And, you know, we pick up violet to red and 20 to 20,000 hertz, but there's all this other stuff going on. Perhaps these substances are just helping us to be able to perceive a little bit more of the magic that's going on around us that we just miss.
Yeah, and Andrew Gallimore, who wrote Alien Information Theory, which for me is the Bible of the DMT world, talks about how it builds this world in your brain. And I view the DMT realm as what I call divinely digital. People think of digital as machine-like and reductionist and squeezing out the divine. But to me, there feels like a grid, and many others, it feels like a grid often that you see. And I'm increasingly smitten by this notion of digital physics, and that the universe isn't made of stuff. It's just made of quantum properties that can move. And so to me, DMT feels like I'm now able to, like you said, perceive this implicate underlying reality, which I feel is divinely digital. And in that way, I can relate it to UFOs, because if aliens are, to some amount, extraterrestrial coming here, first, we got to wonder, are they sending their A-team? We may not be getting the best of the bunch that hop in rocket ships and come, you know, and endure solar radiation. But also, they may likely not be biological beings like us, but digitally intelligent or artificially intelligent sentient bots that come here. So they may be digital intelligence that come here. And if we are looking at a digital physics world through the DMT glasses, to me, that notion of a relationship becomes all the more possible.
Wow, that's a really awesome perspective. I've never heard anyone kind of speak like that with that perspective. It feels really like it resonates, because yeah, you're right. Like, they wouldn't send their A-team down here into the density,
Right?
to the smog of the city, you know. And so for you, Paul, have you seen like grey aliens, or like more like the Palladian looking being in these experiences? And what do the spaceships look like? Are they, you know, looking like a rocket ship? You mentioned rocket ship. I love that, because my son, when he was 4 or 3, used to call the rocket ship, you know, the Palladians, the rainbow rocket ship. And that was his interpretation of the UFOs and the Palladians.
So when I do DMT, I've not seen entities, whether it's the blue lady, the purple octopus man, the machine elves. I feel the pulsing, throbbing intelligence of the universe. So either I'm not going far enough, I'm going too far, I'm going to the side where the entities are hiding. I don't know, but I feel I'm jacked in directly to the epicenter of the universe.
Wow.
And each time I do it is different. There will be messages and healing for me. Also, the music we play has a big impact. One time I felt, and I now understand nature. Another time, all I could remember was that I touched the divine, and I had tears of joy streaming down my face. I've had messages. And every time is so very different. And I'm at the point, like we talked about, Pete, where I don't feel I need to set an intention, and I don't even need to remember what happened to feel that it has been deeply worthwhile for me.
That's powerful too.
So
I love it.
sometimes I'll be next to people and we've done it at the same time. They'll ask me, hey, what did you experience? And I'll think, how the hell should I know? I don't know. I'm back. That's all I know. And I feel light, or I feel somehow that I've glimpsed at something that either it will let me know about later or build upon. But I have such trust in my friendship with this technology that I've given up. And as a host, I have other considerations also. If I'm doing it with people, are they still okay? Do I need to come out of it? Is everybody doing fine? And so as a host, I don't always have complete control over my own personal experience. But what I've found is it's a profound responsibility to be a host for something like this, because it's a very powerful substance. Yeah. So you want to make sure that people have perhaps some psychedelic scar tissue. And two of the lessons I've been able to distill are, one is this notion of controlled, comfortable surrender. You can go into this with an intention or not, but at some point it may not matter, because it's just this, it's like you skydive and you go up. It's just so overwhelming. And a lot of people sense fear because they're not in control. And so much of what I think is cathartic and helpful from a therapeutic sense is just this feeling of let go. Once you have that feeling of comfort with the substance, that it will take you someplace that may not, like we said, be pleasant, but is valuable and loving. And the other one that I've seen is the ability to do reinterpretation. I had a good friend here one night and asked her afterwards what she experienced, and she said, oh, it was horrible at first. I saw all these mosquito-like things and I was horrified. But then I said, wait, and I noticed that they were coming to me and detoxing me. And this ability, kind of like in a sandbox, to perceive something that could be very strong input and interpret it in a way, but then say, wait, no, it's actually this. I think is very helpful. It can help you feel more comfortable with a surrender, but I think it's something we can bring back into our day-to-day life, that things that we see and immediately, because we are pattern-seeking mammals, assign an interpretation to it, which at least in my case, I'm not then likely to revisit. This kind of playground, just from this point of view of how you perceive and interpret something, can be very helpful to maintain a sense of psychological flexibility, I think.
So good.
That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, because so I feel like for you, you said when you do the DMT, you don't remember what you're doing when you come back. Sometimes. And I feel like that is being in the present moment. And so when an object or the experience needs to be shown in your journey in the next coming days, it'll pop up, and that full trust. So all of a sudden, we're not using our mind to control and, trigger that egoic self to want to know all the details of that experience. You now walk forward, trusting that the journey will unravel as you go. And on top of that, you don't see, you trust that the object of maybe a scary skull face probably may turn into something quite positive. So when we think and rewire our brain and our belief systems as to, shadow energy, skulls, things that look scary, mosquitoes, for example. What if we all change our perspective to think that they're not a negative shadow? It's actually growth. It's a blessing. It could be more love. It could be a gift in a way that we haven't perceived yet. But so many people on the planet are not in that, because we're still learning to really be like, right?
Yeah. And also, there's not a lot of growth in your comfort zone. And we know that intuitively in real life. So why should we expect that a psychedelic experience, especially DMT, which we may feel to be cathartic and helpful and therapeutic, should be comfortable from moment to moment? It doesn't make sense. You know, the first time I did, I asked, are you related to aliens and UFOs? And I got that very encouraging answer. I did it again that night. And this time it lasted 45 minutes, much more like ayahuasca. And I did not get transported, but it came in me, and I felt these waves of healing energy coming inside me. And I was living between the beats of the music, between grief and gratitude. And I just felt this overwhelming flow of energy coming to heal me. 2 weeks later, I did it again, and it said to me in a very clear voice, welcome back, Paul. Let's resume where we left off last time. So it's like the universe stopping, recognizing me, giving me love, and remembering our last appointment.
I love what you've just covered there, Paul, because in a way, what you've covered is the 4 ways that we often help people to prepare for some sort of shamanic ceremony and talk about how the medicine might work with them. Number 1, you feel it in your physical body, right? Which is what you're experiencing there. And of course, with ayahuasca, people get the sweats, or they can get cold, or they can get the shakes, or the morning, the releasing, whatever that may be. You know, sometimes you might have the purge, but it's a physical thing. And then the second way, which we all know about, is you can see psychedelics. So there can be imagery and all sorts of a scenario like clip going on, which if you surrender and you're open enough to it, more often than not has a pattern to it and is trying to show you something. Then the third way, which you mentioned as well, is what we call the consultant, where you go and you see a beautiful consultant. And she or she is commenting, spirit is commenting on your life, giving you direction, reminding, in my case, reminding me of the lessons, And then the one that you mentioned earlier, which I loved, we call the nada. In other words, you sleep through the whole thing. And I've never had this, but some people sleep through the whole ayahuasca ceremony, wake up in the morning, and you know, the shaman says to them, oh, wow, that's really powerful healing. You slept through it all. And I'm thinking, sounds like an expensive way to catch up on lost sleep. You know, I came all this way. I'm going to sleep through the whole thing. I loved your reflection. You're like, I feel comfortable that sometimes I don't need to know. I can trust that spirit knows. And in the morning, I feel like something has left me, or I feel clearer, or I've got a new outlook on life. And those are actually the 4 ways that Roxy and I actually, you know, guide people through how the medicine might come on. And without even discussing it, you've mentioned all 4. Isn't that a beautiful observation there?
Well, I like how you systematize it like that. And let's take that idea for the DMT curious and sort of map out this world a little bit, or the substances, because I think people, and of course, we are not blanket endorsing DMT and telling everybody run out and do it, right? You've got to be very responsible in a comfortable setting for the experience, do some research, etc. But I think a lot of people sort of shy away because they know about ayahuasca and the purges. So I view there are 2 very distinct branches to DMT experiences. There's the purgative and the explorative. On the purgative side, you have ayahuasca. Can be a 6 to 8 hour ceremony. You may well throw up. And in that context, you may want to and feel that it's necessary. It's part of the experience. The high end of that is what's called combo, which is the frog poison, where you start off on your hands and knees with a bucket in front of you. You remember, and you take that needle and you put some poison, some toxin in you. And that's not designed to be having a nice, relaxing time. That is heavily purgative. So that's the purgative branch. On the other end, you have DMT, which is what we did together. Then you have 5-MeO, which can be much stronger. And then you have Bufo, which is about the strongest. each one of those, although like you said, you may feel your body, there's no bodily impact. You can have a nice dinner beforehand. You can have snacks afterwards. That's encouraged in the reintegration. But this is a mostly spiritual, emotional journey that may well, like in my case and others, feel some purgative things. And Roxy, you had a very strong emotional experience that was sort of emotionally purgative, but not physically purgative. So, and you can curate these experiences how much you want to do. I've had people just take a couple puffs and take a walk outside and relieve their anxiety for 4 or 5 days. So for those people who are interested, but have only heard about ayahuasca, you can have a very resonant experience with DMT that need not be physically purgative.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to put it too. And may I add, some of these things just sit easier in our physical system or our, let's call it our personality base than others. So in the whole experiment that Roxy and I ended up meeting you through, which was, you know, this show of 2 crazy Australians who are into consciousness, who go to LA and try different substances to help them to connect to higher levels of consciousness.
Oh yeah, so nothing, no ayahuasca, because that was our medicine before, but we hadn't tried all the other avenues, right?
So it's like through that, you know, this is how we, you know, got to, and they call that work, you know. Oh, you guys were working over there. Yeah, you could call it that, you know.
Divine.
It's like you don't want to really say what you're doing. It's like going from place to place, getting filmed, trying these different substances. But we learn so much about ourselves, so much about our relationship, so much about our mission and what we're doing. But the interesting thing, Paul, we found out is we don't particularly like some of these methods, these permission slips. I'll just openly say, I found that Kambo frog ceremony so what's the word? It was like so physically just upheaval like I don't think I need to do that one again. Okay, it's like when they put the dots on the arm, I felt literally like a bullfrog. I got so hot in the neck, I felt like my neck was going boom, 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 boom. With the temperature all modulated, and I was like, I could feel every beat of my heart. And
where's the purple octopus man when you need him?
I reckon there was no guy. The only friend I had was the blue bucket, and he wasn't saying much. And this experience, I thought I was going to make it through without purging, and right at the end, she removed the dots from my arm. And by the way, she said a normal dose is 4. She goes, but I've checked with Spirit, Pete, and you need 4. And I said, can you check with Spirit again? So she goes, yeah, you need 4. So I'm like, right. So I had this 4 dots on my arm. And Paul, maybe there is some sort of spiritual growth in it all. I just found the whole thing very uncomfortable. And right at the end, when she took off the dots and I could, in my mind, relax, it was like, oh my gosh, she's taken that stuff off me. I can relax. It's like at a mental level, I let my guard down and looked away for a moment and sort of changed my state. And that's when the purge came. And I was like, oh shit, it's still in me. Oh, into the bucket, right? And in that instant, I got it's okay to surrender. In that instant, I got it's okay to be vulnerable. I got, you don't need to take yourself so seriously, Pete. Like I got all of this profound in the last 30 seconds, Paul. It's just as it was leaving me, it's like the 21 and a half minutes before it were like torture and I was hanging on. And then I'm like, oh God, it's over. And then boom, it hit me. And I actually got a message, and I got something from it. And the most interesting thing, as you reflect, is 20 minutes later, I had a spring in my step. I was joking around in the kitchen. I was in a really good mood. I wasn't hungover, broken, rattled in any way. I mean, I actually did feel good now I think about it. Would I go through all that again to feel like that? I think I'd rather just have an ice, you know, or do a juice cleanse. But
well, you guys are intrepid psychonauts, traipsing around Southern California, trying all sorts of different modalities. You know, these things, I'm very heartened to see, especially in the United States, where we've been very regressive, a resurgence in the clinical prestige of psychedelics overall. You know, it was the Nixon administration who started what we call the war on drugs, not because they thought these substances were bad, but because they wanted to alienate brown people and hippies. So it was not at all an enlightened, let's protect our children strategy. It was a craven political strategy. And what's interesting to me is that this antagonistic, bad faith, corrupt central actor position of that of the United States government is the same in psychedelics and UFOs and Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
We simply don't.
That coming.
Yeah. Well, so I've tried to sort of sketch out the link between DMT and aliens. There's another branch that goes to cryptocurrency as well.
Now, I've got a dear friend, Brant, who I will send this to. He is a Bitcoin miner and sheds full of computers. I don't even know what the heck it works. They're not full of picks and shovels. I do know that. They're full of computers. They use a lot of electricity. I am fascinated, and I didn't know this was going to come up, but what's the link between Bitcoin in this conversation and what you're talking about?
So basically, there's a talk I give called Bitcoin Astronomy. And the idea is that if there are other civilizations in the universe, and if they have individuals who have individual rational economic motives and interests, if they have finite resources, and if they don't have magic, then it's almost inevitable that they will develop a store of value protocol akin to what we now call Bitcoin, which I think at some point will be called Earthcoin, because when we colonize Mars, I don't think they're going to use the US dollar and monitor US Fed broadcasts to see which way the wind is blowing. They'll use Bitcoin. But then since they can't mine it, they will create their own Mars coin. Bitcoin will be called Earthcoin, and it's our planetary credit score. There are people in the UFO community who feel that our nuclear installations are sending up negative beacons of danger to the Galactic Federation, and they're coming here to make sure we don't harm ourselves. I don't know. I think there's observational bias around nuclear facilities that can see more things in the sky than 10 miles away. But I actually do think, Bitcoin is the biggest innovation of our lifetimes. And I feel that the blockchain and Bitcoin could well be sending positive beacons such that other civilizations would say, okay, they're ready to have a seat at the adult table. To me,
interesting. So good, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The underlying ethos of crypto, even before you slap on currency, is decentralization, is allowing individuals to communicate and exchange values between themselves without the interference or skimming off the top of some government entity. And then you can have a financial layer, you can have secure voting, you can have other things. But it's about decentralization and individual empowerment, which is exactly what psychedelics are all about. Now, I've talked about digital. I think that DMT is this window into this divine digital universe. Aliens may be digital and artificial intelligence and likely post-biological. And Bitcoin obviously is a digital currency that was created as a digitally native store of value. So I feel, and I've been working on this link to establish this more and more, that these three things, aliens and DMT and Bitcoin, et cetera, are indeed related in a way that I think I'm just starting to sketch out the basic contours of.
What a great title for this
I
podcast.
love this.
Aliens, DMT, and Bitcoin.
Keep going. Tell me more.
It's fascinating though. What I love is the positive beacon. So
Yeah.
often people are in the negative, right? And to your beautiful point earlier in the chat today, Paul, when you said, you know, so often that is just relative to someone's experience, right? In other words, a lot of the things that happen to us in life are basically neutral. And whether we assign a positive meaning to it or a negative meaning to it is often based on our own false beliefs or personal damage, etc. And we can choose to, as Roxy and I are learning to change our language, go from so much crap's going wrong today to what an exciting day. Here's another unexpected thing.
How exciting.
Because all this shit's going
Yeah.
on. How exciting, you know?
You know, there's a Chinese parable that you may have heard about a farmer. Oh, first, I wanted to show you,
Yes.
I created an image in AI to me that encapsulates the nexus between Bitcoin, aliens, and DMT. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it here.
Oh, I love
Is that about the right
yes.
distance?
Yes.
That'd be great.
I'll get
Thumbnail.
I'll get it from you. We'll put it over the top.
I'll send it to you, but that's what I feel. So this Chinese parable is a farmer who has a son, and one day they have a horse, and the horse disappears. And his neighbors say, "Oh, that's horrible." And he says, "Maybe." The horse comes back the next day with two other wild horses. And they say, "Oh, that's wonderful." And he says, "Maybe." His son is then trying to train one of the horses, but falls off and breaks his leg. And the neighbors say, "Oh, that's horrible." And he says, "Maybe." The next day, the army comes by to conscript young men, but passes him by because he has a broken leg. His neighbors say, "That's wonderful, maybe." And you keep going on and on. And back to our, you know, and what you brought up again, Pete, about interpreting things and reinterpreting psychedelics, especially DMT, I feel, help you maintain that maybe. You know, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are those who are okay with questions they cannot answer. And then there's the other camp of people who are not okay with their answers being questioned. And a lot of us are not comfortable leaning into such a bizarre phenomena like UFOs because we don't know where they come from. I don't know where they come from. I don't know life without UFOs, but I'm convinced there is a phenomena that I call meta-terrestrial, meaning it's beyond our current understanding. Could be some super secret military, maybe. Could be our collective unconscious, could be extraterrestrial, could be interdimensional, could be a mix of all of the above. I don't know, and I don't need to know to accept the reality of the phenomena.
Yeah.
Until you need to know, it'll cross your path when you really need to know, and you've just got to trust that.
So to loop this back to Bitcoin, how can Bitcoin be the positive beacon? Is it that it's a representation of us learning to come together and work in a more, let's call it 4D consciousness state? Is that the point you mean?
Yeah, and I actually, because I teach finance, I have looked back, and I think that the intellectual underpinning for a blockchain is actually 46,000 years old. And so this yearning for the type of enabling and freedom that a blockchain can offer individuals is deep-seated in the history of our species. Bitcoin, because it represents decentralization, I think so much of the problems in the world today are centralization and the corruption that engenders. I'm here in the United States of America. I wouldn't be the first to say that there's a lot of corruption in my dear government. So Bitcoin was created specifically in response to the excesses and abuses that we saw in the 2008 financial crisis. It's written into its white paper as to why it was created, as a solution to that, to allow individuals to maintain their value, to not have it inflated away. We've been accustomed to think of inflation as natural. It's not. It's legalized counterfeiting. And it represents theft by the government, especially our super oppressive US government. Bitcoin is a vote for freedom and for peace, and it may well be what saves us in the future.
Wow. We might need to finally get ourselves into Bitcoin, babe.
The water is warm.
Yeah, we were just so like not knowing what to do with all of this. So, you know, you don't act until it really does cross your path. And that's, I guess,
you guys,
life, really.
You guys travel around the world doing psychedelics. You did psilocybin and Joshua Tree. Bitcoin is a lot easier, a lot less scary than any of that stuff. So come on in, the water is warm.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I love though that this link, you know, and what we're talking about are things that some people would say are out of the ordinary. Oh,
Oh, sure.
Fringe type ideas. You know, in this discussion, we're throwing around these topics like nothing, but things have changed dramatically, right? Let's call it less than over the last 50 years, but certainly a lot in the last 50 years. We'll link this back to your father, Allen, because he starts off as an astronomer, is that correct? And then ends up getting notoriety, because a lot of people would have heard of Allen Hynek if they watch a bit of Gaia or Unified TV or Ancient Aliens or whatever it may be, right? These amazing shows talking about these different people. So is this why you say you've been around UFOs all your life? Like, what was childhood like growing up around that? Because it must have been real fringe back then.
Well, you know, something that came to mind is I'll speak at a UFO conference, and yes, there are UFO conferences, and people will say things to me like, hey, Paul, man, we're here to talk about real shit like UFOs. Why you got to get weird and talk about DMT and Bitcoin? So people get very tribal. Just because you're open to something doesn't mean you're open to other things. So yeah, my father was an astronomer and professor of astrophysics and was asked by the Air Force to help them study what they used to call flying saucers. And he didn't think there was anything to it. This is in the late 1940s. So he thought it was post-war hysteria. But he was there for 20 years heading up something called Project Blue Book. And he came to feel that there is a phenomena. He didn't know where they're from or when or who or what, but there was a phenomena that merited serious scientific study. He realized he wasn't studying UFOs, he was studying UFO reports. So he needed a nomenclature, a classification system for people to understand and compare apples to apples. So he came up with close encounters of the first, second, and third kind. Close encounter of the first kind being you see something within 500 feet. Of the second kind, there's some kind of physical evidence, perhaps radar corroboration. And a close encounter of the third kind is you have an experience with an entity. So Steven Spielberg read one of my father's books, said, I want to do a movie about that, hired my father as advisor, bought the rights to the title for the movie, and gave my father a cameo role in the movie. So he became very well known in the UFO world for somebody who had this sort of character arc as a debunker, not to a believer, because scientists don't often traffic with the word believe, but as an acceptor of the accumulated weight of the data that suggested that there's something going on, and it's certainly something worthwhile for us to study.
That's so cool. What a story.
What a
so he came up with First Encounters, and then the movie, cameo in the movie, hanging out with Spielberg.
And how old were you, Paul, when all of this was going on in your childhood?
I was about 15, and I remember during the movie, my mom asked me, she said, hey, Paul, the director of the movie is going to come meet with your dad at the airport in Chicago. Would you like to go? I said, okay. And then 2 weeks later was the day, And she said, okay, Paul, you're going to go with your dad to the airport. I said, I don't want to go. It's 45 minutes away. She said, you said you're going. You are going to go. So I met Steven Spielberg under duress.
Wow.
And I met him since. I worked on the movie Tintin, which he directed, and I talked with him and my brother Joel. And so in my life, we had flying saucer ornaments on the Christmas tree. We had UFO witnesses over all the time. So I literally don't know life without UFOs. I've never seen one. I would love to. I'd love to be a +1, but I don't need to see one. And indeed, my personal experience is not as important as any role I might be able to play in teasing out patterns from the data and getting people to work together, different entities to share databases, et cetera. But so I grew up in a scientific household. Our father is known in this context for UFOs, but he was an astronomer at heart who had a late in life side hustle of UFOs.
Wow, that's so incredible. Is there any profound, you said that you had visitors over that had experiences with aliens and extraterrestrials. Is any experiences of those stuck with you that you can share?
Yeah, I'll mention the example of Father Gill, who had a sighting in 1957. He's an Anglican priest from the UK who goes to Papua New Guinea. And he's inside one night for evening prayers. Here's a commotion outside. And a lot of the New Guineans are outside. He goes outside and they see a craft hovering in the sky. And Father Gill is a very intelligent man. He's doing real-time trigonometric calculations to determine how far and the size and all this. And there's about 500 witnesses seeing this craft in the sky. And so at one point, they see a hatch open in the report and entities standing there. Father Gill waves and they wave back, the entities on the craft. And there's a little bit more, and there's other sightings, but there are also sightings in other part of the country which seem to establish a flight path trajectory. So to add further evidence. So years later, Father Gill came to our house for dinner. He was in Chicago for an ecumenical religious conference. He wasn't on a UFO book tour. And so he's having dinner with us. Well, if you've seen a UFO and you come to the Hynek house for dinner, the quid pro quo is you're probably going to have to talk about that. Now, I'd already learned from my father, who was, mind you, trained as an astrophysicist, who learned these soft skills on his own on the fly about how to talk to somebody about an experience, and especially be mindful that this may be, whether it truly happened or not, the most traumatic experience in their life. So tread carefully. This is years later, and my father would ask people their accounts, slightly different versions, slightly different angles to see if it's consistent, if they embellished it over the years, if more people came forward with more types of evidence, etc. So I'm watching my father ask Father Gill again about this case. And the first thing I thought was, this guy is honest. He has no reason to lie. He's not selling books. He's not profiting from this. This certainly didn't help him in the minds of his superiors in the Anglican Church. So he has nothing to gain. Very, very smart guy, speaking in measured, calm tones, very matter of fact. This gentleman also seemed very comfortable in his skin, and just what my father would call a highly credible witness, relating a story, a report of something he claims that he and others saw that's remarkably consistent over the years. And if you go to a casting agency, you couldn't find someone from Central Casting just more believable. Now, this isn't the most exotic story. There's no, fluid samples taken from the body and star maps. But to me, it's one of these cases that stands out as, why would this guy lie? And how would he be fooled when he seems so perceptive and intelligent and aware? That it's one of the cases where I look at it and say, yeah, you just can't, sweep that under the rug and say it never happened. And it's part of the tapestry of many hundreds, thousands of cases like that that may not have the most exotic elements, but when you look at it in totality and combine that with other many cases of Air Force pilots, for example, who my father used to tease the Air Force and say, these are your own employees who you train. So it's a little bit rough for you to dismiss their accounts. It adds up to a phenomena that just doesn't go away. You can dismiss 95% of the phenomena as hoaxes, people mistaking Saturn for a UFO, etc. But there are about 5% of cases, which are a percentage that holds fast, of cases that experts, the military, scientists have investigated and say, I can't ascribe a earthly or terrestrial explanation to this. And when you have that many over the years from around the world, it's hard just to say it's all crap. Again, that doesn't mean that they are extraterrestrials. We don't know. It could be something completely non-physical from our unconscious. But it seems to me, seeing cases like this that I did as a child, that there's something happening. And to me, it's one of the most important questions we could answer. So I'm happy to stand on my father's shoulders, just maybe 1 inch above the height he attained, and see if I can't push things farther. And for me, that research path is the interdimensional one, which I feel that DMT provides access to. So that's how I got interested in DMT, is because of UFOs.
He would just be so proud of you, Paul. Congratulations.
I hope so. I hope
Being
so.
so brave and conquering this, this light bridge to the next dimension. That I feel like that is a big, it's not just little, it's a big thing. So you should be proud of yourself.
I'm loving how it seems now you're tying this in also then with current events, and with Bitcoin, the change in currency. What else are you working on, Paul? Like, what are you excited about at the moment, interested to learn more about? Like, what are you fascinated by?
Man, you guys are tough. UFOs, DMT, and Bitcoin is not enough. I got to have more than I bring to the party.
Absolutely not. And the link between them all. And if you say you're done, that's a good answer too. I would allow you to go, you know what,
Wow.
I'm on a holiday, but I know there'll be an answer.
Roxy, this is a tough crowd. Yeah, I'm interested in all sorts of things. These are the 3 things that I'm sort of focusing on with presentations and research. But my overriding passion is, and I touched upon this, is to demonstrate the objective reality of supernatural encounters. And that can be ghosts, DMT, Bigfoot, what have you. But my whole life, I've met people who say, I commune regularly with Zorg from the Pleiades. Okay. Or Bashar, for example. If there are these super intelligent entities that are communicating with us, and they feel they have important messages to impart, well, I can help, or we can all help them by demonstrating their bona fides. And that can then broadcast a message that is now being narrowcast. So I'm working in various experiencer communities to help inculcate this proactive approach. We can't always, as we know, control these experiences, but sometimes with intention, we can have some amount of agency, we can influence them. And, so far, the sum total of UFO evidence, whether it's strange alloys or star maps, hasn't really moved the needle with the mainstream scientific community. I don't think scientists in general have lined up in this Spartan intellectual shield wall fending off the heretics. I think mostly it's prosaic. They're busy. They're working on a grant. They're teaching. They theories like Graham Hancock with different theories about archaeology, but they specialize in Mesopotamia, and Grant is talking about early American, so they don't feel qualified and they're just busy. So because I grew up in a household that was scientific and also fringific, I speak both languages, and I don't care what the US government says or says or does. They are corrupt and bad faith. I think we can make progress by having more fruitful conversations between experiencers of all manner of phenomena and scientists. I know what the scientists want. I know them personally. And if we can start bringing in them what they consider evidence, it will make them lean into the phenomena more. And the more sort of iterations back and forth between experiencers and scientists is the way I think we can propel this forward and make meaningful advances in bursting open the narrow filter that exists now between us and those who claim to have superior intelligence.
That's beautiful. And I feel like it's like the left brain, the right brain coming together, the masculine, the feminine coming together, you know, each party's coming together, working together, and no more like false and illusions, you know, because we can't handle the information, you know, the secrets, there's no secrets. And I think as humanity, you know, raises their vibration, this togetherness will really play out and we can all help each other, which is really nice. I'm glad to hear that that's kind of your intentions in your work at the moment. So good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Paul. I think we have had enough, but we are definitely keen to have you back if you would be up for it. I'm sure lots of people are going to enjoy all of your beautiful information and insights. So yeah, thank you so much for coming and being a legend. We love you so much.
Always a pleasure.